In 1984, many people thought the Speck family in Niagara was crazy when they ripped out their Concord grapes at their own expense and instead planted Chardonnay, Riesling, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Today, they're considered prescient for having been one of the first wineries in the region to make the leap to premium grapes and wine. 3 Speck brothers now run the winery: Paul, the president, Matt, the winemaker, and Daniel in sales and marketing, who joins me today to talk about the winery's latest initiative in launching new brands. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me today.
All right, thank you for being here. Now, one of your brands is called Sibling Rivalry, so right off the top we should clarify that that is not why Paul and Matt are not joining us today. I understand that you folks do get along together. We should also clarify that this isn't exactly a critter label, as I'm sure you and your brothers don't consider yourselves critters like the purple penguins and the pink giraffes. But tell us, it is a marketing concept wine, so tell us the idea behind that wine and why you went that route.
Well, I have to really put it in the context of Henry of Pelham first. Henry of Pelham was a real guy. He was an ancestor of ours, and though we started the winery with our father back in the early 80s as kids, planting the vineyards and getting things going, we told the story of the land and of our ancestors who settled here, who planted these old Concord grapes that you described, and built a kind of heritage or historical winery story and very classical thing to do in our industry. And that sustained us very successfully for a long time. It continues to. It's been we were one of the original modern wineries in Canada, sourcing locally grown grapes exclusively. 25 years on, or 20-odd years on, we felt it was time to do something new, and so we did what came naturally to us, to try and tell our family story again, but tell it in a new way, and that's where Sibling Rivalry came from. It's almost like the true story you never knew behind Henry of Pelham, where it's the 3 brothers who actually planted the vineyards and got this thing going. So we thought it would be true to our roots. It would be tell the story of the current generation. And part of the concept of it was you can't just repackage the same wines in a new fancy label. It has to be something authentic about it. Why bother making these new wines? We just felt we were young enough that we still had new things to explore. And the wine industry in Ontario had really been founded on the concept that we are the old world in the new world, which I think is very accurate. But we thought, if we were starting a winery today, would we start another traditionally minded winery with classically styled wines, or would we try and break new ground and do something different? And that's the basis of Sibling Rivalry, and they're very different than our other wines.
And who is Sibling Rivalry aimed at, like in terms of demographic, and what did you do to figure out who to aim it at? Did you do focus groups or market research, or what was your strategy and thinking behind the brand?
Our target audience is everyone with cash.
All right.
No, it's funny. We're a small company. I mean, and even pretty large wineries, they may be large by winery size, but by company size, so to speak, there are not many large companies that are wineries. And we're in the middle of the pack in terms of size. So we don't have the kind of resources to do advertising in a significant way, like a big way, or to go out and do focus groups and things like that. So I mean, you're looking at the marketing genius, God save us. My brothers and I sit together and talk a lot and hang out together a lot and drink a lot of wine and come up with ideas and throw out the wall. But the things that succeed are the things that start from an original place, and you have to take risks as well and not be afraid to be edgy. And I don't need a focus group to tell me if I like it or not. Either we like it or we don't, and we have to be a bit bold. I think that's true. I think that's true of any business, frankly. But I mean, so really, we started with this desperation of, do we have another idea in us? And I remember in this very office, my brother Matt came in, who runs the vineyards, and we're just talking about. We've been talking about this a lot. We want to do something new, and we knew there's this millennial group coming up, which I'm on the very early edge of, I guess. And we think to ourselves, how do we speak to them, or do we need to speak more to women? Is Henry of Pelham just too masculine as a brand? Are we speaking to women? And we don't know the answer to any of these questions, I'll be honest with you, but we said to ourselves, well, what would be kind of a new thing. And literally, I remember Matt saying, yeah, maybe we just have to, bring someone else in here to help us. And I said, yeah, I know. I've been tearing my hair out of this. I don't know. I mean, what do we know about this? We don't even know anything about growing grapes. We taught ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then I said, I had this idea, though. What do you think of this name, Sibling Rivalry? He goes, well, maybe that's a good idea. And then we literally went for lunch, went to Nona's Kitchen, had a delicious veal parm sandwich, and started talking it over. And like, well, those wines should be multi-varietal, but how would we make that interesting? And started looking at the production side. What vineyards would be best suited to this, and varieties, and consistency from year to year, and so on. And what price point should they be, and what channel? And then we're thinking, who's going to drink these wines, and would we drink them? And and as we went through that process and working with it, then a designer started playing with the wine, and then brought a designer and helped us with the labels because we all loved the name, and we focus grouped it on our wives, our friends, like anybody. What do you think of this? And then we got it down to a few different labels, we had some wild, awesome designs. We have so many.
Tell me about one you discarded but was really wild and wacky.
The final one we settled on, I don't know if it was the wild and wackiest one, but the one that we really loved, it had this, the label as you know it now, with the three brothers on it, which are us, and as young, as kids. And that was what we settled on. We literally, the day we were making the final call on it, we had like 10 label designs, and my wife and her friends who were visiting from Toronto and elsewhere, they're having like a sort of a girls' day, were at our cafe having lunch, and they were actually exactly who we were hoping would buy this wine. And at first we were like, well, these women, these beautiful, erudite, sort of urban and funky chicks, we'd love to buy this wine, and everybody else with cash. And we said, hey, Chris, right here, come on, what do you think? And they landed on this. That was when they landed on. We loved it too, and we said, okay. And then we submitted, brought it to the liquor board in Ontario, and put it in front of them and said, okay, what do you think? And they loved the label. They were totally with us. They were hugely supportive, I have to say. And then they did give us this, though. They came back and said, look, put the kids on it, go for it, but we have to warn you. And this is not them. This is the law of the land in Ontario. If somebody raises a stink about having young guys on the label, these kids, we're going to have to kick this thing out of the stores.
Oh, right. And what age were you on the label? Like what?
Oh, we were probably, and we weren't even thinking this because we were telling our story. So we were the ages we were. I was 8, and Paul was probably 15 or 16 on the label. And that was, we were like, okay, you know what? That's fair. And we're not trying to tell this the wrong way either. So
sure.
So then we said, make them older.
So any concepts like you guys really duking it out or something that ended up on the editing floor?
What did we have on there? We had a lot. I mean, there was one that was a bit like the beginning of My Three Sons with the feet. I don't remember that TV show. That was really cool. There were some that were a little bit psychedelic 60s, and kind of leave it at that maybe. They got pretty wacky and very colorful. We knew we wanted these to be beautiful and colorful. I think they're beautiful, at least colorful and bright and obvious. The really hard thing to do is to tell one thing well, simply. You had to be able to look at it and immediately, from the name to the picture to the bottle itself, know what it is without having to read a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I personally think you've done a great job. What mistake or mistakes do you feel you made and have since corrected, but what did you learn from the process?
This one, what mistakes did we make? That's a great question. I mean, this one, if I look back in our history, the mistakes we made came before this wine. About, oh God, how long ago was that? Back in the late 90s maybe, almost 15 years ago. Must be 15 years ago. We came out with a multi-varietal wine, but we did it under the Henry of Pelham label. So Henry of Pelham, known for Baco, Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, Riesling, whatever. We thought, well, it's time to fill another hole with multi-varietal wines, and we put it under the Henry of Pelham label with all these varietals on it. No one got it. The wine was great. No one got it. Then, years later, under our Cuvée Catherine label, our sparkling wine, we experimented with this absolutely beautiful, I thought it was a beautiful package to put the wine in as a cylinder. And we spent the money on it. Everything was very high quality, but people didn't get what it was. They lost the actual wine within the package. And it was a holiday thing. I think those two experiences taught us that you have to have an identifiable label identifiable brand, and you can't just keep extending your existing brands forever because you'll lose people. And there has to be an authenticity and a reason for it. And those wines were authentic, but they were lost in our portfolio. And like I say, we have no training in anything. My brothers and I all have philosophy degrees and School of Hard Knocks in the video. We know nothing.
So well, it seems like you've learned a lot. Yeah.
We're learning on the way.
Your success reminds me too of the simplicity and the single focus. Way back in the day, I used to work at Procter & Gamble, and there was only one USP, one, whether it was Crisco or Pringles, and I know wine is not exactly that, but you do have to communicate right off the label, and I think that's. Tell me about the success or the performance, I should say, of Sibling Rivalry. How has it done in the market sales-wise?
Really well. It's phenomenal. I mean, we were flattered by its success. Like, we couldn't believe it. I think there's a couple things that are exciting for me about it. One is people loved it, and they didn't consider it a credit label. Like, it really is. It's heartfelt. We're telling our story, and we're really proud of these wines. And so it's taken on a life of its own that way, which is what anything that's successful should do. It's sold across the country. The San Francisco Museum of Modern Art contacted us because they wanted to put the label in this whole history of wine labels they did about a year ago. So that cool stuff like that. It's also been it opened up a category and a price point. And these are things that I don't know if wine drinkers really care about, but from the business of wine, which it is a business at the end of the day, we're trying to turn grapes into a profit ultimately. It's been imitated many times, but not very often very successfully. And it opened up a new price point for these wines, a premium price point, which was great. Mm-hmm. And the entire category, wines of this style are driving Ontario wine sales right now in a very big way.
Yes,
and I think we opened that up to a large degree, not exclusively, but we really helped drive a big wedge in that.
Yeah, I think this is what Ontario needs as an industry to fill out the portfolio, if you will. Now, beyond the price point, so your Sibling Rivalry wines are about $13, $14-ish?
Yeah, $14 to $16 across the country, depending where you are. Yeah.
And how would you describe the category beyond the price point?
Describe the category of these multi-varietals or just Ontario wines?
What you believe Sibling Rivalry opened up. You said it opened up a new category. So how would you describe it? It's not critter labels, and if we try to put a parameter around it beyond price, what would it be?
Well, I'd say multi-varietal wines. I mean, multi-varietals existed very successfully in vintages, maybe one example in particular. But in LCBO wines, it wasn't really a category. There were a couple of concept wines that were, one that was very successful, that maybe started it all off, but they're all single varietals. And then there was no one doing the multi-varietal thing successfully. And it was not because, not a lot of people trying it either. And we're a very traditional brand ultimately, Henry of Pelham, and I think no one expected us, I know no one would have expected us to have done something such a right turn.
Right.
And we established a price point. In Ontario when we launched, $13.95 rather, was a no man's land. There were virtually no wines there of any category, and we grabbed that for whatever reason, and we landed there. And people thought we were crazy because it was such an awkward price point, but it really drove it turns out no one was there, and everyone wanted a wine at $13.95. Then had the right presentation. We hit the flavor profile, and since then, what you've seen is a very successful brand going after the same category of customers at I think $11.95. It's not ours, somebody else, and then 1 million guys all around it, all around our price points with not quite the same success. There've been some Me Too's. There have also been some really good ones that for whatever reason haven't hit the mark yet, and there's been a few that have done pretty well. But it's clearly an area where there's some opportunity. I think it's really cool. I mean,
absolutely, and we should just clarify for those who may not know the tech speak, the multivarietals are using blended grapes. So instead of just labeling it and just using Chardonnay, your white, for example, uses Chardonnay and Riesling and a number of different grapes. We've been trained to buy by the grape. That was our first evolutionary stage, but now coming up with these multi-blends does give you a different flavor profile, but also some insurance. So if the Chardonnay crop works out one year, that's what you put into the blend in the majority, but you've got all of these other grapes coming into the blend as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're especially, we're in an old world climate in the new world at the end of the day, as I always say. And that means that we're dealing with, and by old world, I'm really thinking Northern Europe, not Mediterranean. So we have to have plans B and C. And, plans B and C are multivarietal wines, and we're a long way off from being able to sell a wine that's just called a Niagara, the way they can sell a bottle of Bordeaux and have 5 different red varieties to work with.
Right.
But we can, but this sibling rivalry is a step in that direction, though, because we've created a brand that's identifiable. People are less concerned with the varieties, but they pay attention to that. It's on the label. Mm-hmm. And it allows us that flexibility that the great wines of the old world have always been able to leverage.
Absolutely. Great point. And when you talked about the flavor profile, you hit the mark with the flavor profile. What is that? What is the great appealing flavor profile, say, in the whites and the reds that you're aiming for?
Well, I think our great strength in Niagara, outside of Chardonnay, which I absolutely love, is aromatic whites. We have a real gift for that here. It's our greatest strength. It's why Riesling is doing so well from here. It's why Sauvignon Blanc and now Pinot Grigio are smoking up the San Juan Hill there. And even Moscato, actually. We've, under another label we created a year ago, I've launched the first Moscato from Ontario.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So those are, and in the reds, it's a similar thing. It's as long as they're multivarietal blends, aromatic and punchy.
I get aromatic, has a profusion of aromas, very, sensory. But what are the unaromatic whites? Are there any? Like, what would you consider unaromatic white?
Well, savory, I guess I think of them as savory. It's not that they're not aromatic, but they're not perfumed and floral.
Okay.
So Chardonnay Muscat, that's an aromatic Chardonnay strain. But most Chardonnay is a little more neutral. That's why it lends itself so well to sparkling wines, which we also make. Mm-hmm. It lends itself very well to oak aging, which is more of a savory characteristic. So, Chardonnay in particular stands out, but there'd be others. But that's what we would consider in our region. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Let us taste. We have your your sibling rivalry. Wow, I haven't even opened the bottle yet. But I deliberately chose your pink sibling rivalry because another marketing issue, Daniel, do real men drink pink?
Absolutely, and they eat quiche and they wear pink shirts. I should be wearing one today. We call this a manly pink wine.
What's that? Define.
A manly pink wine. Get over it, guys. We can handle a little bit of rosé. Come on.
Wow, expand your horizons.
Absolutely.
So this is also, it's a dry wine, is it not?
Yeah. The sibling wines they push the boundaries, but they're fruit forward. They're aromatic, as I just said before. They're dry. You'll consider them dry, but they're not bone dry.
Right. Okay, you're still making me thirsty, though. I can feel my mouth watering. Let's get into this one, Daniel.
Here. I already poured myself a glass, actually.
Oh, wow. You're so ahead of the game. No wonder you're in sales and marketing.
That's what I do all day.
The rosé is a personal favorite of mine. Why do you think it's so food-friendly, to use an overused term?
I think it's so food-friendly because, for one thing, it's bright and fresh. It's got acidity, so anything you'd squeeze a lemon over, or it's gonna work with, right? So that, fish immediately comes to mind. But then again, when I eat steak, this is something I forget who taught me this now. Tim Hanai, maybe.
Down in California.
Great way to eat a steak. Grill it, season it with some salt and pepper, and then squeeze a lemon over it. It's delicious. And then I drink Riesling with it, or I drink a rosé with it. So anything I put a lemon over, for me, is rosé. Anything that's charred and off the grill, that bitter char flavor, which we love on grilled meats, again, the rosé is a nice marriage with that. Just on its own, in mass quantities.
Yeah, because I find it brightens and lifts. So you would think, oh no, cherry flavors, that's too heavy for rosé, but it's like that lifting contrast between the food and the wine. But I also find that rosé, if you forget that syrupy pink stuff from the 70s, this is nothing like that.
No.
But what this has for me is that it's got all the flavor of red, so beautiful field strawberries and raspberries, but none of the heavy tannin, oak, and alcohol of red wine, which you really don't want in the summer. Not that we only drink it in the summer.
For sure. And you look at, we drink with our eyes. I mean, as much as anything, you see a light red wine, you think it can't be full-bodied, you can be surprised. You see a big Chardonnay, though, or say Chardonnay, it can be a very full-bodied wine, and it's a white wine. So, same with rosé. I think the rosé, the color is suggestive of certain kinds of occasions. It's festive, and it just, I don't know, it seems like it's going to taste good just by looking at it. Who doesn't like pink Kool-Aid?
Yeah, exactly. Unfussy. You don't have to, you really don't have to swirl and sniff this, but it's so lovely. And rosé is one of the fastest growing categories, is it not, in the liquor store?
Rosé is doing very well. It's obviously off a smaller base, but it is taking off. It's a global phenomenon, especially in Europe, where you're seeing people, all the manly men have embraced rosé. But it's a phenomenon here too. Like when we started, oh God, we struggled to sell. I remember our first rosé under Henry of Pelham was a Pinot Noir rosé back, I want to say in 1990 or something, or 89, and it was just like heaving chunks of wood. I mean, just selling that stuff it was great wine too. Today we make 3. I mean, Henry of Pelham makes a rosé. There's the sibling rivalry, and then our best-selling sparkling wine, Cuvée Catherine, is a pink rosé.
That is a lovely bubbly. Wow.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for chatting with me today. This was really informative. I love the marketing side of this business, and you've done it so well. So thanks and cheers, and I know we won't be letting this wine go to waste.
Excellent. Cheers. Thanks for having me.